Molt bé, doncs ara tocaria presentar-vos a l'speaker. Està impacient perquè veig que aquí no ho teniu, però aquí davant tinc la presentació. Hi ha un gos que està esperant a que faci la presentació, ja ho veureu, ara sortirà. Però bàsicament, parlant de futur i parlant del món de les aplicacions i parlant del software i parlant de la revolució digital, ens ha semblat que aquest any també era interessant tenir l'opinió d'un expert en futur, però no d'aquests que expliquen què passarà d'aquí 100 anys i que t'expliquen allò de que hi haurà una guerra entre Turquia i Estats Units i totes aquestes coses, perquè això agafa el 2050 i potser tindrem altres problemes. Llavors, hem pensat que potser seria bo portar un especialista que està mirant el futur però més proper, 2 o 5 anys, que és el període que creiem que tenim que aprofitar per ser realment líders en la indústria del mòbil i en la indústria de les aplicacions. Com veureu, no ens centrarem només en el mòbil, ens obrirem una mica perquè el nostre speaker és un expert en analitzar com la societat digital canviarà les nostres vides a través d'infinitat de dispositius. Em refereixo a en Gerd Leonhard, que és el nostre futurista. Jo, la veritat, és que quan era petit la meva mare em deia que tenia que ser arquitecte, però si avui tornés a néixer jo li diria que voldria ser futurista, perquè no hi deu haver cap feina més divertida que poder endevinar el futur o, com a mínim, orientar cap on té que anar. La veritat és que en Gerd Leonhard és una persona molt ocupada, és una persona que viatja per tot el món, tot i que viu a Suïssa, el qual demostra ja un cert grau d'intel·ligència, si no pateix les turbulències financeres del reste de l'Europa, però la veritat és que en els últims 5 anys ha donat més de 850 conferències en 42 països del món. Per tant, la seva visió del que està passant i del que això significa en aquest futur proper segur que és enriquidora per a tots nosaltres. Gerard.
Gracias. Hola, buen día. That's my Spanish. Okay. Cerveza, okay. I have a special connection to Barcelona and to Catalonia because for the last 18 years I've come vacation to Cadaqués, which is a beautiful place with my kids. So I always love coming to Barcelona. There's my two favorite cities in the world are Barcelona and San Francisco. In fact, they have quite a few things in common. So I'm very happy to be here today. Obviously, I will speak in English, so if you need a headset, you may want to get it or have it brought to you now, because I lived in America for a long time, so if I speak too quick, just wave, okay? And I know what you want. So who here is on Twitter? Are you guys on Twitter? Let me see your hand quick. Yeah, of course, that's a stupid question, right? I'm G. Leonhard on Twitter. You can ask me questions on Twitter, and I can answer them later today when we have Q&A or maybe in the afternoon. I also have a special conversations channel on Twitter. It's called Talk to Gerd, at Talk to Gerd, G-E-R-D, that you can also use for this, okay? So today I want to talk to you about the future. I have lots of free stuff available on the internet. If you just Google Gerd in free PDF or use this web address, you can download all my free books, my presentations, my slideshows, and so on. I launched a new book a couple of days ago called The Future of Content. Unfortunately, Amazon does not allow me to make it free, so it's $3, but you can download it on Amazon, the Kindle, if you wish. First, I want to give you something very important, okay? Yesterday, a report from America has reached us that there's a new legislation called the Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA, which is a new legislation that's pushed through, if they are successful, before Christmas, that would make it illegal to run any website or app or any service that may eventually cause some sort of infringement on an image or a person or a movie or whatever. Is the most restrictive legislation that we've seen in America for the last 10 years, right? And we should all, if you do business on the internet, you should go online to Mozilla, which is Firefox, and sign the petition against this law, which is going to make life very difficult for all of us in the internet startup space. So it's kind of a piece of bad news here first. But what is a futurist? So a lot of people are saying, so you know the future, you can predict the future. I'll just give you a brief summary. What I don't do that. Basically, I deal with things that are beyond the obvious. If Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And of course, what Henry Ford built was the car. What Steve Jobs built was the iPad. Nobody was asking for the touchscreen. What Jeff Bezos built at Amazon was the Kindle. Nobody was asking for an ebook reader. Right? Very few people. So going beyond the obvious is crucial if you're going to actually achieve anything. Disruption. If your business does not disrupt, don't even start. Right? Because that is the nature of what we do on the web. Because the future, as you can tell here, is already here. Google already has automated translation coming up. In 3 years, I can talk in English or in German, and it comes out in Chinese. This is our reality on the web. Already that's there. Wristwatches that hold more storage than any computer ever before. Virtual reality, augmented reality, robots that teach English in Korea. And I doubt it's very effective, but that's already in place. Virtual reality, telepresence. We're living in a pretty noisy world. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I can tell you sometimes the noise level is deafening. I thought we had lots of noise in 1999 when we did the internet things in San Francisco, but today we have all these choices, and Ray Kurzweil, who is, of course, the singularity guru, says a kid in Africa with a smartphone has more information than the president of the US 15 years ago. And I tell you, 2 years from now, the same kid in Africa is going to have more information than all of us put together who are not currently in this sort of sphere of being young and being a kid. Okay? And that, for example, as we've heard earlier before, that innovation will come from developing countries, from Africa, from Brazil, from India, from Indonesia. It will not come to a very large degree from Europe. Unfortunately, we have to look at this and see if we can fix this. Marshall McLuhan, the original futurist, said, we're going to live in a global village. This was 1971. I watched the video on YouTube. It's pretty funny. He's talking about Facebook, 1971, right? The global village. We, in fact, now live in a global village. And I see huge opportunities for you guys here to innovate, to invent things that are going to be used in China, or in Brazil, or in Argentina, or indeed in Africa.
のところがまだ 100% ではないんですね。やはりお客様に使っていただくためには、ある程度もう少し認識の精度を向上したり、またその先の本
This is a demo by Docomo showing that you can speak in Japanese, it comes out in English. Right? It's already available. Now imagine what this will do for journalism, for videos, for television, right? For business. Right? Will our kids still have to learn languages? I mean, think about the ramification of this. So now we have Julian from WikiLeaks, and we have Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. And Julian says, I give private information to corporations for free, and he is the villain. And Zuckerberg says, I give private information to corporations for money. I am man of the year. Right. This is a bizarre situation that we're looking at. Many first-time issues need to be solved. For example, this whole issue of privacy, of intellectual property. This wasn't possible before. I went to a place in Russia 4 months ago where every single book that can be ordered is being scanned by those people and given away for free on the internet. You don't have to buy from Kindle, you go to Bookmate, I won't mention it now, where you get it, right? Yeah, just join this club, you get free books, 500K downloads, right? All these issues are new issues that we have to solve. They can't just be outlawed. They have to be solved, right? Privacy is not an issue for regulation, it's an issue of responsibility. So we're now people of the screen. I mean, obviously, you guys are all using various screens right now, but every time you're going to taxi in London or in Germany or in America, right, the taxi driver has 5 screens in front. His Facebook page most of the time is going the whole time doing something there. His GPS screens everywhere, in the airplane, everywhere, and now we're also becoming people of the cloud, as Kevin Kelly says, the co-founder of Wired. And people of the cloud will say, you know what, I don't need to keep my music on a shelf. Spotify is good enough for me. Mark, Simfy, YouTube, right? Flipboard, Instapaper, Netflix, the BBC iPlayer. Our music is moving in the clouds. Our films are moving into the cloud. Our education is going to be in the cloud. Our money, our health, everything. Think about the savings for government if we all have electronic books. No shipping, no printing, flat rates with a publisher, $10 devices, €10 devices. But people of the cloud will expect a lot more than just a connection. That's a given. So people of the cloud are going to say, well, you know what? Mobile is really the key for everything. If you're looking at these numbers from America, Twitter, Facebook, Pandora, everything is about mobile. Everything. In fact, there's quite a few people who are saying that we're looking at the end of the PC. I mean, I don't believe it's the end of the PC, but clearly, people in Africa, India, South America, and so on will not be accessing the web through a computer. They'll be using mobile devices. And so the end of the PC is sort of a relative thing, but if you're looking at this slide right here, all the increase in terms of mobile use, laptop, and of course the tablet, I mean, you can see 85% access of mobile in Japan. I would say we're going to look at 90% mobile access on the web within 5 years, and only 10% on computers. So that makes a huge financial difference for lots of people. As Eric Schmidt says many times, it's all about mobile first. 3 years ago at the World Congress, back then in Cannes, right, where he said, okay, it's all about mobile first. Huge shift for this company. And basically, if you're looking at this, for example, the smartphone has a long way to go. If you're looking down there in the corner, that's the kind of people who are using a tablet, right? How much growth we're going to have there, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And if you're looking at this graph here, you can see that basically all of the growth in terms of subscribers for 3G will be happening in Japan, USA, China, Brazil, India, Turkey, Russia, Vietnam, and all those kind of places. Developing countries will kick our butts. Okay? That's what we have to watch out for, because there's lots and lots of things that we can do there together. I mean, if you're looking at this graph here, in terms of global app and advertising revenue from Kleiner Perkins, right, clearly shows where the money is. I mean, the growth there is going to be absolutely mind-boggling. Ads and content and apps, that's our dinner. Right? That's where all these things will come from. And of course, on that note, advertising has always funded content. And that's not going to change. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of these numbers, but $600 billion a year is spent on advertising, and $400 billion a year is spent on marketing and public relations and other assorted pitching. Okay? Roughly $1 trillion. And now 1/3 of that $1 trillion is moving into mobile, into apps, right? Into interactive, into video games, right? Into over-the-top advertising. So that's about $300 billion. On the web, you can see that free downloading, no longer a big issue. That's why we don't need laws to deal with this, because people are no longer downloading. You go to a party of kids today, what is the jukebox for the party? YouTube. Right? No need to download, just click on the link on YouTube. And there's 1,000 websites where you can stream. Look at the on the video there. Right? It's going to be absolutely mind-boggling. Video is the next text. And apps are the new cable channels. So you think about this just a little bit going forward, right? All the commercial issues of who's allowed to use what, they're all being worked out right now at this very moment, because basically video is the future. Here in Spain, Latin America, you actually, I found out last night by Googling around a bit, 17 hours per viewer in Spain during the month of October last year. Spanish people watch a huge amount of online videos. So the numbers are actually quite favorable here, right here in this country. And then we have this graph showing really today we have very few smartphones, 835 million. We're going to go to 5.6 billion smartphones. Imagine what that will do for the economic effects of what we do here. All of that work shifting over to smartphones and content, mobile, the cloud is king. Content is king, of course, but we can argue about who is king. Doesn't matter. It's a royal family, right? All of us get to be king at different times, content, mobile, the cloud, right? I mean, we're living now, as I'm sure you know, we're living in a social operating system, a social OS. Forget the word social media, right? It's just a tagline. Right? It's just a cheap way of building a better mousetrap. It's about a social OS. We're now connected. The first time you ask for a job somewhere, somebody will go on LinkedIn and check your name on LinkedIn, right? If you're not there, they won't even do a meeting with you. If they Google and they can't find you anywhere, you don't exist, you won't have a job. Right? We're now connected socially, professionally, completely overlapping those two different things. Right? As Kleiner Perkins, who was a lead investor in Facebook, very, very early, says it's all about this, right? Social, local, mobile, and to which I would add the cloud and video. So SoLoMoVi cloud. Right? That is the future. Right? If you're in this business, you'll do fine. If you hold back from being part of this, I think it would be quite difficult in the future. And you may have heard about Maslow and the needs, the hierarchy of needs, right? Self-actualization, belonging, esteem, and so on. Now we can see on the left what's happening. If you've ever been to Brazil or India or Indonesia, right, you know it's food, shelter, mobile phone. Right? That is the hierarchy of need today. I mean, it's mind-boggling what we see here, right? For example, scenes like this.
He's on his phone. He's texting. That's when we go on the side, dude. He's just chilling.
Now, this is obviously in India, right? But I mean, you can tell what people are doing. They're really crazy about their mobile phones, right? Very good news if you're an operator, right? Not so good if you're driving. But basically what's happening is here that we see this complete convergence of the telecom space, which is, I think, the last time I checked, about $7.6 trillion a year, and the media space. I mean, this is the trend that we're living in what I call telemedia. Okay? All of the telecoms, the mobile operators, the ISPs are going to engage with advertising, they're going to engage with social networks, and they're going to engage with content. Starting with music, films, education, movies. Right? That's the next 5 years that we're going to see here. So we're looking at a world that's essentially going to look like this. So if you're a developer, right, this is a very good time to bring the two together, media and telecom. We're going to look at this kind of scenario where we have content creators, advertisers, device makers, search companies, telcos and operators creating a new pie. The reverse approach is to say the government should prevent people from downloading for free. Well, maybe they should do that, but does it make any sense? Does it make any money? Right? Now we're going to think about how can we build a new system that's a bigger pie rather than cutting up the same pie. Right? So we're going to see development in this, what I call telemedia futures, with entirely new roles that we have to take. Whether we're in the content business or whether we are in the app developer business or device makers, we all have to take new roles. So this is also where, of course, the money will come from. Right? Because together these economies are very, very large. There's about $330 million are made every single day by mobile operators with SMS. Right? 330 million a day. How big is the music industry? 15 billion, right? So if I'm not mistaken, you give about 50 days, you've got the entire music business on SMS. Right? So the numbers are really quite mind-boggling here. So the future is going to see this kind of system to where we're more like a chain, right? We're not a value chain in this way, we're a value circle. As Umair Haque writes in his book, The 21st Century Capitalism, he writes about how we create a circle of value, not a chain. Right? So if we don't collaborate, I think this is basically not going to work, and you're going to see this kind of thing happening in the next couple of years. You already have that with Orange in France, TDC in Denmark, Google, of course, and many other companies. So you're looking in this direction, we're going to have some very serious food chain conflicts. In other words, like who gets to do what? And for example, if you have the new Apple iPhone, right, now you can send what's called an iMessage to each other. Right? It's like the BlackBerry channel. It is not using the data channel from the operator for money. It's free. If I have the iOS, then I can send you a message with image and everything for free. And this is really a huge food chain conflict with the operator. So Audi is now getting into the apps business. Apps for cars. So you can have, if you have an Audi S8, you can have a speedometer, which is an app. Right? So it looks different on Christmas. Right? I mean, if you're looking at these numbers, clearly there's a huge conflict coming up that all the value is being generated over the top. In apps, in transactions, in advertising, in content. And the telcos are sitting there like lame ducks. Like the record companies 10 years ago. They'll have to do something to be part of this in the future. So if you're looking at what's called ARPU, average revenue per user, in Asia, for example, you have Indonesia, where I do a lot of work, $3 is the average revenue per user for a mobile operator, and it's diving. And this is happening here too, and it's going to happen here even quicker. So now we have to turn this around and say it's about average engagement per user, involvement, and premiums, what they spend extra. And that's going to be a very big trend in the telco business. But not to bore you too much with that stuff, if you're looking at this piece of equipment, it's called an Aakash tablet. It's very big in India. It costs $35. These devices, if the government buys them, for example, can be as low as $10. What are they going to do with this tablet, right? They're going to consume content, they're going to do their banking, they're going to learn stuff, they're going to go to school through there, they're going to make phone calls, right? They're going to do all these things which are going to be highly disruptive to the current environment, right? Radical behavior changes. This is a woman standing in front of a mirror called the tweet mirror. Okay, you go in a shop, in a clothes shop, you put this dress on. I haven't tried it myself, but and then you can tweet to your friends and saying, how do you like what I look like on Twitter? And then you decide to buy the dress or not, called the tweet mirror. Now, this is a strange thing that most of us wouldn't do, but radical behavior changes are everywhere. Look at this guy, right? This is a pilot. No longer flight manuals. It's on the iPad. And guess what they do with the iPad when they're in the airline, right? They watch movies. They don't just look at the flight manual. They couldn't do that with the real flight manual. And so behavior changes everywhere, right? The end of masses. You can see here there's a famous book years ago called The Long Tail that you may know from Chris Anderson, really great book, describing how more and more people do more and more different things. So here in the travel business, right, you see the blue line is top 50 travel destinations, and the red line is a different one. People going to different places, listening to different music, buying different food, fragmenting. And so are the advertisers. If you're looking at how people watch TV, using the Apple TV, the Roku box, we're fragmenting. So you could very well say it's the end of the mass market that we're approaching. It's not here yet, but it will be here in 3 to 5 years. So it's going to be about niches. It's going to be about stuff like this, $10 devices, 10 euro devices. As people say, for many Brazilians, the first computer will be a tablet. And they won't know it's a computer. It's a multimedia reading device. So when you're looking at these kind of things, this is a slate tablet, right? Clearly, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Africa, that's our future. Because they are changing fast and moving quickly. That's something we have to consider in terms of our business models. You know what nowness means, right? I mean, we live in a pretty bizarre world. For example, now if you're looking for a sushi restaurant in London, you're no longer going to buy a travel guide in a bookstore. You're not going to go to Google and search sushi London. You get, whatever, Guide Michelin or hits or whatever, right? You go to search.twitter.com, or you go to Facebook, and people are recommending sushi restaurants, and sometimes when you show up, the same person who tweeted is still sitting there. So you can ask them about whether the food was really good, right? It's about now real time, right? Twitter takes about 21 seconds for news to arrive. An average television crew takes 45 minutes. So now basically we're looking at what's called the Twitter News Network, TNN, right? That is the new CNN. I mean, it's hard to believe that a company like CNN is going to be replaced. But they're using Twitter, of course, which maybe they're saving grace. So now you have the new iOS. It does exactly this. It's about nowness, right? It's about saying, okay, what is relevant now? How do I do this? And here's a great slide that's called What Happens in 60 Seconds on the Internet. And it's pretty mind-boggling that we have 695,000 Facebook status updates in 60 seconds. I don't know if you know this, but Facebook has 17.5 billion minutes spent on Facebook every single day. I mean, it's truly mind-boggling. The speed is crazy, right? So the keywords are these: fast, now, relevant, right? And ringtones. So what we see here on the web now, right, it's that because of the speed, it's much more important to me that it's relevant. And that goes for advertising. Because once we're so excited about so much information coming, now we're much more excited about relevance. You can download 62 million songs from Spotify, or from the internet, and 6 million from Spotify if you want, right? But who needs that many songs? I want to listen to 10 songs. One good book, not 500. Right? So it's about relevance, it's about human applications. Right? It's not about just all the choices. Right? It's called the paradox of choice. So clearly today, you know that as consumers, we are leaping. For example, in Indonesia, where I do work, the government is helping the telco to set up wireless networks on 16,700 islands in Indonesia. Okay, now these people never had radio or television. Now they use Android phones, and they can watch YouTube. Right? Imagine what this does to their brains, right? To religion, all the stuff that they can watch. I mean, customers are leaping and people are leaping, but what about our business? We're not leaping. I mean, you would not believe how many clients I work with that are completely disconnected from what they do privately as to what they do in the company. Right? If your company is still blocking Facebook from the internet, right, there's a lot of them, right, you're in deep trouble. Right? Because it shows a degree of ignorance, obviously, that is quite mind-boggling. Right? It's like blocking Google. So we really have to learn how to make leaps, too, to go away and say, okay, let's turn the snail around and think differently. Here's a screenshot of the new iOS, which is completely disruptive. Here's an app called WhatsApp. Do you guys use WhatsApp, right, for messaging? Right? Don't have to pay the operator for SMS. Oh, we lose 300 million a day. You know, that's kind of a problem for them. So it's about disruption and lubrication. Right? Sounds kind of strange, that word. I'm sorry. But disruption, okay, this is crucial. Right? This is the key word. Look at all the successes in the last 10 years. Skype, Twitter, YouTube, Google, eBay, Amazon. Right? They disrupt something. They don't wait for somebody else to show them the way. They disrupt, and right here in Spain, you can see another interesting graph here, the projection of mobile internet users. I mean, if you want to disrupt, you have an audience here. I think the number is wrong, actually. I'm betting on about 50% in 2015. Okay? So the numbers are quite, I mean, you have a fertile ground here to disrupt and to lubricate. And Amazon is the best example for this. Amazon sells more books on the Kindle than it sells in print. Okay? And my book came out on Amazon. When I put it up, it took me a week to prepare the format. I put it up. 24 hours later, the book was available worldwide on all of the Kindles in the world. And I sold the first 1,000 in like 14 minutes. Okay? Try to do that with physical books. No chance. Amazon's mantra is disruption, make something better, and then make it work. Lubricate it. Right? Squirt some stuff in there. Right? So this is Google's strategy, of course. You know, Google has done this 100 times over. Right? Gmail, Google Docs, Documents, Android, right? Make it work, disrupt it, build a new business. Also, Richard Branson has done very similar things in his business. Now, NBC, for example, that has sued YouTube for years about using clips from the TV shows. Right? They were, in fact, the main entity suing YouTube for copyright infringement. 4 weeks ago, NBC announced that all of the TV shows are available on the iPad app for free. So after 7 years or so of suing YouTube, they said, oh, you know what? There is an audience. Let's just do the same. Right? So here's a word to you. If you're working for traditional companies, you either disrupt yourself or you're going to be disrupted. One of the two. You have a choice. You make that choice. You work for an airline or for a government or so, you're either going to disrupt yourself or just waiting for somebody to blow you away. And that is your choice. That is the alternative you have. You don't have the choice of saying, you know what, we don't participate. Won't happen. Because now people are using mobile devices and they do this, right? They give you instant feedback with the stroke of a button. And very soon, we were discussing this in the break earlier, you'll be able to use voice commands for your television. Right? Siri, which is the new iPhone thing, right? You can speak to it, and Google Voice has similar things, right? You can say, please show me episode Twilight Zone from 1974 with the weird guy with the hat, right? And it will find it. I mean, imagine what kind of empowerment for the user that's going to be. Right? We're looking at the total consumerization of IT. The stuff that used to be only for companies, for rich people, right? For people who were able to buy an iPhone, that stuff is becoming available and it's completely killing, for example, a company like BlackBerry. Save email, right? That was a big deal, no longer is. Right? And BlackBerry has completely missed the boat, as you can see here with this chart, because now the consumers are the ones who are using stuff that used to be only for businesses. So now when you're creating something, if you're a developer, right, I think it's very important to have a good story. You guys may know about this app called Square. Right? Square is an app that allows people, every person, to pay with a credit card. You install the app, you have a little plug-in with hardware, and you push the card through on top of the phone, and anybody, a street vendor or a drug dealer, yeah, whatever, you can pay with a credit card. Right? I think it works in the US right now, but there's 3 other companies, right? And they have a great story. This is a story. If you're going to do something, tell a good story. Otherwise, I think it's hard. And now on the web, it takes 1,000 voices to tell a single story. That's Facebook, right? We tell 1,000 voices for a single story. That's very important. And that's finally becoming possible. So now we're living in this world to where basically, because it's all there, it's quite overwhelming. So, because I've been doing this since 1995, I think it's very important that we realize that it's not about making noise. I mean, I'm quite masterful at noise making myself, right? But keep this in mind, when you're inventing something, when you're talking about stuff, right, make sense, not noise. Because when you make noise, it lasts about 2 seconds. Somebody else will make more noise. Right? So your app and whatever you're inventing has to make sense, right? And if you're looking at our current scenario around the world, people have all these choices of channels. Right? It's about curation. That's why we need professional journalists, professional TV producers, and record labels, and publishers, and all these people, because they curate, right? I mean, if you go to a museum, do you want to see 5,000 pictures? You see 14 that somebody has put together. When you go to a restaurant, you don't eat everything on the menu. It's been curated, right, by somebody who makes the menu. Right? It's all about curation. And then the next thing is, because now we're living in this world of digital connection, it's all about experience. And I'm talking about personal experience. I'm not talking about experience, virtual experience. But basically, if you build an app, it has to stage an experience. It has to do something that moves people, right? How many people are using Flipboard here? Anybody using Flipboard? Right? When you use Flipboard, which is a great way to read news on the iPad, right? It's an experience. It's an interface. It's not that I can't do this anywhere else. I can do this on Google News, but the interface is better. It's an experience. Right? We're living now in the economy that people call the experience economy. This is crucial for the success of what you do. Right? Flipboard is, for example, one of these examples. Why do I use Flipboard instead of the Google Reader? Because I can literally sort of dive in and immerse myself. Right? Domino's Pizza in America has an iPad app, and the pizza is terrible. Right? But you would not believe how many people are ordering a pizza now, because it's a game, right? The pizza ordering has become a game on the iPad, right? People play this game, they push order, and they don't eat the pizza. Right? Right? It tastes like cardboard, right? Right? But people love the game on the iPad, and you get some sort of coupon that comes with the iPad, right? I mean, it's an experience, right? So now today, whatever you're creating has to be web native. Right? It has to start with the internet. Ask yourself a simple question. Would what I am inventing work without the internet? If the answer is yes, don't do it. Okay? It has to be web native, mobile, and over the top. If you're looking, for example, at Al Jazeera, the Arabic-speaking TV, CNN type television station, you can watch CNN or Al Jazeera, not CNN, you can watch Al Jazeera on Facebook. So you can watch television on Facebook. When Facebook goes public next year, which it will, right, it will fetch an estimated $100 billion in investment money. So you're going to see Facebook television, you're going to see Facebook music, already have, of course. You're going to see Facebook education. Facebook becomes the next TV network. The Guardian iPhone app, anybody has tried this? Same thing, right? It's web native, mobile, and over the top. It's all about these things, right? I took this photo last week in the airport in Munich, okay, and it reminded me of one thing. When I looked at this car, which is, I think it's a Toyota, right? I realized that they're showing me the inside of the car. I mean, I can look inside, right? So they're opening up the car for me, and I kind of like this idea as a metaphor for that. Basically, companies are becoming open now. They have to open up so we can take a look inside. Because if we can't take a look inside, we sort of feel like we don't know what's hiding. Because we've been surprised by Goldman and by Enron and by Madoff and all these disasters, right? Now we want to take a look inside, right? And Steve Rubel says, if there's one truism that you can bank on, it's this: the most important currency is trust. And how do you get trust when you build something? By being open. By presenting your mistakes and presenting your achievements, just by saying, look, it didn't work, but we're fixing it. Right? That is the most important paradigm that we see on the web today in the open economy. Now, we're all living in this stage of where we know we are all generating huge amounts of data. when we go somewhere, we say, okay, log into Facebook, like this product, click on this website, forward a YouTube video. And on the mobile phone, that's becoming a standard. Now, all of a sudden, you could really say, as the European Commissioner said years ago, data is the new oil. And now all the discussions about people using my data, right? For example, on Gmail, when I use Gmail, Google is reading my emails. Right? So it's really quite clear, when I go somewhere, it's a perfect match with the content of my email. And that's the deal. I give Google the data, they get to use it, they give me free services. Right? So data being the new oil is a huge topic, and I think anybody inventing today technology or being entrepreneurial in this space, think about how you can use data by permission, of course, right? How does that work? And I guarantee you that Facebook is going to make the equal amount of money that Google makes today, using data provided by the users to sell them advertising. Right? That's already in place today, right? And what Google did with this is going to be done by hundreds of companies. And this brings up a huge amount of issues, like, why do I allow them to do this, and what can they do with it, and how can they share with it? I mean, these issues have to be carefully thought through, of course, right? Again, here, Spain, right? It's also very heavily engaged in social networking, which essentially is a form of data mining. So Steve Rubel says, it's very, very hard to become an open business. But let me tell you, I think there's very, very, very few choices of not to be an open business. Apple, right? Apple is a company that doesn't have, do you know a Twitter feed by an Apple employee? Doesn't exist. Apple is not a social company. Apple is not an open system. And they are extremely successful. But if you're going to do this, good luck, right? I mean, if you want to bet on something, then the bet is going to be that you have to be open. And that's what's going to happen to Apple as well after Steve is gone. Rest in peace. Now, Tim O'Reilly says, and this is very important, he's a publisher, he says, open and closed on a great dance. Openness is where innovation happens. Closedness is where value is captured. In other words, you generate an open system so people come to you and use your service, and then you try to offer something else to make money from it. It's much LinkedIn, Zing, Flickr, all those services, Evernote, those services, Dropbox. Right? It's free, but then you pay for an extra service. Right? The idea of a freemium. I worked in the music industry for a long time. It was probably a big mistake. But I was a musician and producer for 15 years. And then I got into digital music, and this is what the music industry looks like. It's actually a little bit more serious than that. A 71% decline in a decade. Right? 3 days ago, EMI was sold to Universal. Right? What is the reason behind the music industry's decline? It's really quite simple. They like control better than money. Right? If you are obsessed with control, you're going to die. Right? I mean, this is a fact that we have to face. Whether you're an airline or a bank or an insurance or a media company or a newspaper. Because the users are realizing that it's a sort of make it, eat it or go away kind of equation. Only 2% of the Western societies where iTunes exists actually put money into iTunes, buy from iTunes. Everybody uses the software, but only 2% buy, and very few here in Spain, as I'm sure you're aware of. Right? So there is a bit of a problem with the control obsession. I think this is a very, very big point for media companies in the future. Right? This kind of idea, controlled customers, customers who are in a system that can't get out, I think that kind of idea is system failure in the future. And this is very important wherever you're working in a company. If a company pursues this kind of course, right, it's going to crash. I mean, we're seeing around the world that is a theme that goes across all industries, even B2B, right, that you have to open up and actually create new systems. Okay, I want to talk about free because I think free is an important topic, right? When you launch a new product, the most powerful thing you can do is to make it available for free or for what I call feels like free, which means somebody else pays. Third parties pay. As users, we love it to be liquid and fluid. That's why we like Google products, because they're simple and they just work, right? So we want music or films to feel like water. When you go to the bathroom here, you don't have to put the credit card to flush the toilet. because somebody else is paying, but the water is not free. Somebody else is paying for it. At home, you pay for the water. Right? So there is a system in place that makes it liquid, an economy around free water. So this is a very good example. How do we make it feel like it's just so easy and then upsell? I think there's lots of examples on this to do both. This is, of course, ultimately the key. And so this is something that's very important now in the internet economy, is that this idea, as I say down here, it's free, but they sell you information. This is what drives hundreds of internet businesses, right? Because when you sell information, that's called advertising, right? Or marketing, or whatever you want to call it. Right? That is why I say data is the new oil. That is why we see the data economy absolutely exploding, right? So paid with data or with attention is a path to the future. I mean, if you're looking at this slide here, again, taken from Kleiner Perkins, right? In this slide, you can see that the average ad revenue per user on the internet was $9 in 1995. Today, or this year, it's $49. Every internet user is worth $49 in advertising. Now, don't tell me that you can't fund things from advertising when you're looking at these numbers. Clearly, radio, television, magazines have always been funded by advertising. So that is going to be a major driver of advertising in the future as well, if you're looking at these graphs, right? So clearly that's the way. So with newspapers, just to sort of give that a larger story, right? There's a lot of discussion, especially here in Spain, about people paying to read a newspaper online, paid apps, right? Paywalls, so-called paywalls, right? And I think it's really quite simple. The problem is not the paying, it's the wall. People are not opposed to paying for things that have value. Did you know that in America, 23 million people are paying $10 a month to have Netflix, which is a movie service on the internet for streaming? 23 million people are paying $10 for movies, right? Why are they doing this? Because it's simple, it works, right? It's like this, right? It's a gradual approach to the paying point. So if you want to make money with what you're doing, it's not a good idea to do the first part. Because you'll only get 2% of the population to come along, unless it's a wipe-out proposition. Right? But you have to find a way to put the toll booth at a very clever point. And guess what? This is different for each business, for each country, for each culture, and for each product. And that is, of course, the tough part, right? But the problem is not the pay, it's the wall. If somebody tells you that people on the internet don't want to pay, don't believe it, right? I mean, we're paying on the internet every single day. Last year, $450 million were spent on Farmville. Do you guys know Farmville? Okay, where you can buy a virtual tractor for your virtual garden. You can give virtual flowers to a virtual person in a virtual place. Very powerful, obviously. Right. I don't know why people do this, but they do it. Right? $6.5 billion spent on virtual products last year worldwide on the internet. Virtual products like pets. So, I mean, clearly the problem, people are not worried about spending if they think that the value is there. Our job in this business is to create and show the value, and this is why I think the freemium idea, which I'm sure you know, it's a combination of free and premium. Right? So you start with free, and then you have a premium. Right? That's a very, very powerful concept. So if you're building something today, I think freemium is the way to go if you can make it work. For example, the New York Times now has an iPad app that's sponsored by Ralph Lauren. So basically, somebody else is paying. The idea of third-party pays is a powerful idea, branded content. That brings me to the most important point here, is that because if we're worried about how we're going to get paid with what we're doing in the content business or technology, basically, advertising becomes content as well. The most clever advertising today is games. Gagaville, Lady Gaga, right? It's like Facebook, Farmville, same thing. Car manufacturers, Audi, Mercedes, BMW, they run less ads and they give us games for test drive to download, for test driving on the iPhone app or whatever, Samsung or whatever system that people use, right? So advertising becomes content. Clearly, this kind of thing of the past, where advertising was essentially lying, I mean, 90% of it, right? Or pitching something we don't need, that nobody liked, right? That's not going to work here, right? Advertising, this kind of advertising is not sustainable. So that is a huge opportunity. If you're in the business of technology, you're also in the business of advertising, and then you're also in the business of content. Right? There's a complete connect between those two. So in this scenario from the network, from the central entity to the networked company, right, there's a couple of basic things that we should keep in mind, and then I'll wrap up and we can take some questions. Advertising is content. I mean, remember there's lots of interesting ads like the shaving cream, what was it called, and of course the Berlitz schools, where on the internet we forward ads to each other that are really funny, and we get 100 million views on YouTube with an ad. Right? I mean, advertising becomes content, marketing is curation, brands are publishers, marketers are storytellers. I mean, this is all not new, but on the web, it's brought to its extreme form. So if you use these principles for whatever you're doing, you will be extremely successful. Right? Because clearly, this is the trend that's also very hard to do. I mean, we don't want the consumers to be a participant. Right? I mean, this is a pain for us if people think that they can have input on what we're doing. Right? I mean, consider the whole idea of bloggers versus newspaper editors and so on, right? It's actually quite a bit of work to have conversations. Right? When I worked for a big record label 5 years ago, I said the first thing we should do is we should get a couple of you guys to start blogging about the music business. Right? And the first thing they said to me, they said, you know what? We don't want to hear from those people. We just want them to buy our music. Right? In other words, we don't want to have a conversation. We just want to sell. Right? And that is not going to work. So therefore, there's going to be lots of changes here. And that goes with this interesting slide. Here's a guy who invented the wheel. And his wife is asking him, what is the return on investment on the wheel? Right? But he just invented it. You cannot always ask, how much money do I make with what I'm going to invent tomorrow? That's like a rock musician saying, this song I'm just about to write is going to make me buy a house next week. Right? It doesn't work that way. And now because society is on such a fast track, you don't have time to plan return on investment. You don't have time to run through all the models. Right? It's speed over perfection, something very un-German to say. Okay? It's much more important to get it out there and do something. I mean, Google has 1,200 alpha projects. Any engineer at Google can say, I need $50,000 to do this. And you get your money and you can do something. 20% of your time as an engineer at Google can be spent on new projects, and they have 278 beta projects, including Gmail and others. So they're thinking about return on engagement, not return on investment. Not to say that you shouldn't be making plans how you're going to get your money back, right? But first things first. In this environment, I think that's absolutely crucial. When you look at these three companies, Amazon, Nike Plus, the running shoe that connects to the internet, Skype, right? What do they have in common? Right? Well, quite simply, they're market makers. They're not market recipients. They're not sitting there and say, wait, give me something easy to do, I can make lots of money with it. If you really want to push the envelope, you have to make a market. I mean, look at the apps that we like the most. I mean, I love Instapaper, for example, an offline reader. Right? It created a market, but there wasn't one really before, because nobody had the need for it without those devices. Right? And the Kindle, of course, and of course Skype. Right? So entrepreneurs, remember this from the beginning. Don't look for faster horses. There already are lots of horses. And if they just go a little bit faster, what's the big deal? Think about a car. If you're making cars, you know, guess what all the car makers today are looking at? Wind turbines. Car makers are becoming wind turbine manufacturers to create energy. They're also working on self-driving cars. It's a huge initiative. Cars that don't have a driver, that drive themselves. So just to sort of summarize things a little bit and then maybe take some questions if we have time. Okay, point number one. Whoops, sorry. Stay there. Okay, it's about disruption. When you do a business plan, how can you disrupt somebody who's not doing a good job? How can you make something better? How can you then take the disruption and add some lubrication and make it better? Right? How can you put those two things together? We're all becoming people of the cloud. Right? If you're not serving people of the cloud, you're going to eventually be disconnected. And this is really a question of time, how quick that will take off, of course. Right? People of the screen, people of the cloud, people of the screen. These 5 bullets. Right? And by the way, you can download my PDF later if you want on Twitter. Gerd Leonhard is my Twitter ID. I'll put it up there. Data is the new oil. The single most important driver of the economy is no longer oil, it's information. It's data. Wars will be fought over data. Right? What we're seeing now, many governments around the world, is a war on data. Who gets to use what? Who gets to spread what information? Who has what rights over what content? All these things are about data. Telemedia. If you're a content creator, a filmmaker, a movie studio, or a newspaper, a publisher, telecoms and ISPs and operators are your natural fit in the future. Niche markets, right? It's the end of a system where we say, we're going to reach masses in this one place. Right? We will still have that for quite some time, but now it's all about hits in the niches, being successful in the niches. And then whether we like it or not, considering that I'm not 25, okay, when I talk to lots of people, they hate the idea of a social operating system because it's a level playing field. Anybody can put your product down on TripAdvisor. Anybody can rate you. Anybody can write something on Wikipedia. That's not good for businesses, right? But that is the system that Marshall McLuhan describes as the global village. That's what we have now. It's our choice to say we're going to be in the social OS or we just jump out and get off the grid, right? So ROE, not just ROI. Look for return on engagement, how that brings money back. Not just this, and this as a principle of commerce. Right? If you can make something free, or feels like free, with a third party paying, you should. Because that's how you get to a very, very large, big audience. Anybody here using Dropbox? Yeah, Dropbox user? Yeah, there you go. See, there's the example, right? If I invite you for Dropbox, I get 250 meg for free in storage. Or gig, sorry. Right? That's what it is. It's about a free service that spreads virally, right? If we can invent this, then that's, of course, very big. Now, I want to end with a final word from a really, really brilliant man who was also an utter tyrant. Right? A very, very unique character that I had the fortune of meeting twice. Now, he says something very important in his speech in Stanford graduates 5 years ago. He says, we have to stay hungry. This is our problem in Europe. We're not hungry. Stay hungry, stay foolish. If you're not foolish, if you're not playing with stuff, if you're not experimenting, how can you expect to ever invent anything? The second one, he said that on his last speech when he announced the latest things at Apple. He says 57 times in his last speech, it just works. That's why we love this stuff, right? Translate that to what you're doing, right? Stay hungry, stay foolish, and it just works. So thanks very much for listening. Here are my various things. I have an app you can download. It's free on iPhone and Android as well. And all these books can be Googled for free if you just go to this web address, gerd.fm, free PDFs. Thanks very much for your time, and hope you have a good day.
Thank you very much, Greg. Perhaps we can discuss all about the situation, ideas in a couple of years, maybe in Cadaqués, better?
Yeah, next conference in Cadaqués.
Gràcies a tots vosaltres. Aturem ara la jornada per fer el lunch, per fer sabeu que hi ha un dinar a peu dret per facilitar el networking i que a les 15:15 a 15:45 continua la sessió amb la sessió temàtica sobre apps. Gràcies a tots per la vostra assistència i interès.